Hi there, Pisces. Thank you for joining me for your weekly forecast for week commencing the 29th of August. This is a big week for relationships. Jupiter and Mercury continue their alliance from last week. In fact, they're still alongside Venus on the first day of this week, but by Tuesday, Venus moves into the deep and passionate 8th house of your scope. It doesn't matter what someone's been saying to you, it's what they really mean. And if you're fortunate enough to be in a tie which is really progressing and it's relatively new, it can take a big leap forwards into something so much more committed and perhaps even something so much more sensual too. If you're in a long-standing relationship, the shift of Venus on Tuesday points more towards perhaps some fortune around your partner or a shared business that you can both be celebrating, not just now, but in the 3 or 4 weeks to come. But at the very start of this week, although Jupiter and Mercury are still in that alliance, which can see some bright and bubbly feedback coming your way, coming from you, by Tuesday Mercury goes into a retrograde. When Mercury slams on the brakes like this, it does mean that there can be mix-ups, misunderstandings and glitches. And in your case, I think this is going to be much more likely about your interaction with others. It's not necessarily you're going to do anything wrong. It could be that someone else is elusive or unreliable. So there's going to be a need to be aware of this, first of all, but also be aware that Mercury's retrograde is not all negative. It does have a reputation for that, especially amongst some, but I like to see it as an opportunity to actually grapple, especially with relating, if relating is not particularly a strong suit of yours. And if you practice at it, especially your listening skills, over the next few weeks, you can find that other people become much more responsive to you. There can be a tendency for you at times to cocoon yourself away, be a bit dreamy, and at other times be very ice-cold logical. And because of that, it's not always easy to stay available for people in a consistent way. And perhaps Mercury in its logical home zone of Virgo, despite in its retrograde, is really encouraging you to just get better at relating. But there's also a solar eclipse this week, which is also in Virgo. So over the next 6 months, you do have a fantastic opportunity to bring something new, bright and better to bear around your relating or your relationships or partnerships. But it's not going to be without the potential for communicational issues, and that's because not of Mercury's retrograde, it's because this solar eclipse clashes with the stern energies of Saturn. Now, if that rings a bell, it's because Saturn and Neptune, your ruler and in your sign, have been in a very difficult right angle since the middle of May. One which for you has probably made work pressures rather draining, and if it's felt that you can't really be the creative soul you need to be, and it's all about the grind and the expectation of the big organisation, that may have at times been very dispiriting. Now, Saturn stays in this location in this solar eclipse. So unfortunately, although you might want to relate only on your terms, the expectations and demands of others is still going to be to the fore, particularly in professional relationships. Those are ones you cannot take for granted. But I do feel that once the lunar eclipse occurs in your sign on the 16th of September and Mercury starts to go forwards on the 22nd of September, you can get a much greater idea of how this is all going to play out. But I think your relationship sector definitely comes under the astral microscope quite intensely over the next month and probably over the next 6 months too. So it's time for you to work at how people perceive you, and it's not about being insincere and saying what people want to hear. It's about being genuinely interested. Or if you have differences, it's about recognising that other people have a right to see things differently and not taking that personally. So if there are times when you're not quite getting the messages you want this week, take into account the Mercury retrograde, take into account the role of Saturn, but also be conscious that Mars has been alongside Saturn recently, and it is for the first half of this week. But it too has been affected by that draining influence of Neptune. But Mars breaks free from Thursday onwards, and it's going to bring out within you a natural dynamism and assertiveness and self-confidence, particularly in your professional or worldly interactions. Use this in the right kind of way while still being receptive to others and tuning up your listening skills, and you could really do well in any kind of management role or where you need to work with the public, sales, anything to do with public relations. You could really prosper. But you're a unique being and you have to find your way of being, but I don't feel it can be without some kind of connection to others. So whether you are finding that need to draw back and just do creative things for yourself, or you find yourself just looking at things in a very cold and very mechanical way, it's coming in from that and finding a balance between those two extremes, and then becoming more aware of how you can interact with others better. And the fact that Venus is in Libra is going to help us all in this regard over the next 28 days. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you for joining me. Good luck and goodbye for now.